Hello. So we're going to go through your Chapter 2 study guide because you got your test coming up in a couple of days. So we're going to start with writing fractions as decimals. So zooming into number 1. So we've got -7/40. So remember, one thing that I've suggested to do every day in class, if your fraction is negative, that means your decimal is going to be negative. Sometimes we miss a point because we forget the negative sign. So I like to go ahead and put my answer box with a negative sign first, so I don't forget to do that when I'm finished with my math. So this is numerator divided by denominator. So we're going to divide 7 by 40. And then we add our decimals and our 3 zeros. So 40 cannot go into 7. 40 goes into 70 once. 70 minus 40 is 30, and drop your next zero. 40 into 300, or 4 into 30, goes 7 times. 40 times 7 is 280. Subtract, you've got 20, and drop your last zero. 4 goes into 25 times, so 40 goes into 205 times. 40 times 5 is 200, with 0 left over. So this is going to be negative 0 and 175 thousandths. So you guys can pause, rewind, fast forward, whatever you need to watch. 3 and 11/16. So this is another one. Remember, I suggest putting your answer box. If this is 3 and 11/16, your decimal is going to be 3 and something. So I like to put my 3 point in my answer first so I don't forget that whole number sitting in front of my decimal. Okay, so we're going to do numerator divided by denominator, add your decimals and some zeros. So 16 cannot go into 1 or into 11. 16 goes into 110 6 times. 16 times 6 is 96. Subtracting at 14, and drop your 0. 16 times 8 is 128. Subtracting at 12, drop your next 0. 16 times 7 is 112. Subtracting to get 8. If you get a remainder, you've got to keep adding zeros until you realize it's either going to terminate or repeat. And 16 times 5, woo, finally, is 80. All right, so 3 and 11/16 is equal to 3 and 6,875 10,000ths. Write the decimal as a fraction or a mixed number in simplest form. So we've got to reduce all those fractions down to lowest terms. So the first thing we're going to do is read the decimal. So that's read as -4 and 45 hundredths. So you're going to write that exact same mixed number. -4 and 45 hundredths as a decimal is equal to -4 and 45 hundredths as a mixed number. But we know that numbers ending with 5s and 0s are divisible by 5. So if I divide my numerator and my denominator by 5, I'm going to get -4 and 9/20. Remember, if the decimal was negative, your answer as your mixed number also has to be negative. So number 4 is read 122 thousandths. So this is how we write 122 thousandths as a fraction. Remember, the best way to reduce fractions is to make your division ladders. These are both even numbers, so we're going to divide by 2. So we get 61 and 500, and the fraction bar goes between. So in simplest form is 61 500ths. Complete the statement using less than, greater than, or equal to. Be sure to show your thinking. So on your test, if you just have a sign with no math, you're not going to earn any points. You have to show me why you chose less than, greater than, or equal to. So what I could do is I could convert -4 4/10 to a decimal. So -4 4/10 as a mixed number is equal to -4 4/10 as a decimal. Well, over here, I have -4 65/100. Now, since this decimal has 2 digits past, since this number has 2 digits past the decimal, I'm going to add a 0 behind that 4 to make those numbers more similar. So if you're thinking on a number line, -4 4/10 would be here. -4 65/100 would be to the left. Left is less. So your answer would be -4 4/10 is greater than -4 65/100. You don't have to show that number line, but you have to at least convert both to fractions or convert both to decimals. All right, so here you have two choices. You can either find a common denominator for 14 and 16, or you can do cross products. So for this one, if I multiply 16 times 11, that's 176. And since these are negative fractions, that's going to be -176. Multiply cross products, 14 times 13 is -182. So now all you have to do is compare -182 to -176, and -182 is less than. Add or subtract right fractions in simplest form. So subtraction of decimals, first step, line them up. When you read so this is 2 86/100 minus 12 1/10. Remember, a minus sign is a negative sign. So we have a positive number and a negative number. Different signs, find the difference. So I'm going to find the difference. I'm going to put the bigger number on the top, minus the 2 86/100 on the bottom, and very important to add your 0 placeholder. Drop that decimal straight down. Borrow from your 1, 10 minus 6. Borrow from the 2, 10 minus 8. Borrow from the 1, 11 minus 2. Now, did you have more negatives or more positives in the problem? You had more negatives, so that answers -9 24/100. We've got 2 negatives in a row. 2 negatives in a row makes a positive. So I'm going to actually rewrite this as an addition problem just to make it clearer in my brain that I'm adding these fractions together. Then we're going to line them up vertically. Now we're going to make a division ladder to find the least common denominator. To find the least common denominator, we're going to multiply 4 times 2 times 3. 4 times 2 is 8, times 3 is 24. So I'm going to rewrite equivalent fractions. So 12 times 2, 7 times 2, 8 times 3, and 1 times 3. 14 plus 3 is 17. Now, because that minus minus became a plus, that second fraction is now a positive fraction. So we added 2 positive fractions together, so our answer is going to be a positive fraction. So here we have a negative fraction plus a negative fraction. Same signs, find the sum. Same signs, find the sum. So I'm going to add these two together, line them up vertically. So you've got 8/18 plus 23/18. So 23 and 8 is 31/18. Go back up and check your signs. Anytime you're finding the sum of two negative numbers, your answer is going to be a negative. So this is an improper fraction. So the last step is to divide. We're going to convert that to a mixed number. Remember that remainder becomes your numerator. Oop, sorry. And since we were combining two negatives, we're going to have -1 and 13/18. That's your final answer on number 9. Okay, so here we've got a +9 and 2/10 and a -2 and 8/10. Different signs, find the difference. Line them up. Put the bigger number on the top. Decimal comes straight down for subtraction. Difference is 6 and 4/10. Check your signs in the problem. You had more positives, so that answer is 6 and 4/10. Find the distance between the two numbers on the number line. Okay, so on your test, you do not have to draw the number line, but I'm just drawing this for a visual. Remember, as we've talked about, if both of the numbers are on the same side of 0, you're going to subtract. If all I have to do is go from here to here, I'm going to find the difference between those two numbers. So right now I'm ignoring the signs because distance is always positive. So I'm just going to subtract 4 and 7/12 minus 3 and 1/6. So that's 4 and 7/12 minus 3 and 2/12. Distance is always positive, so that answer is 1 and 5/12. Find the distance between -3 and 4/10 and 2 and 8/10. So now if I had to walk all the way from here, oops, sorry, if I'm going to go from here to here and plus and go from here to here, I'm going to add those two distances together. So adding decimals, line them up, add 3 and 4/10 plus 2 and 8/10. Decimal comes straight down for addition. So the distance is a positive 6 and 2/10. Your sports drink bottle is 5/6 full. After practice, the bottle is 3/8 full. Find the difference of the amounts before breakfast and after practice. Before practice and after practice. Okay, so find the difference is always subtraction. That's the first thing I'm thinking in my head. Anytime I see the words find the difference, that always means subtraction. Well, I know the bottle was fuller before practice, right? So I know 5/6 is the bigger fraction. So I'm subtracting 5/6 minus 3/8. Find your least common denominator. Multiply around. 2 times 3 is 6. 6 times 4 is 24. So we're all going to use 24 for our common denominator. So 6 times 4 and 5 times 4. Oh my goodness, my iPad's being a little tricky today. And then 8 times 3 and 3 times 3. Find the difference means to subtract. So 20 minus 9 is 11. Find the difference of the amounts before practice and after practice. Because the amount of liquid in the bottle decreased, your answer is going to be a negative 11/24. Multiply or divide, write fractions in simplest form. So we know this is multiplication because of the parentheses. So look very carefully. So this is a positive number. And there's a little negative sign over here you got to see. See that negative in front of that fraction bar? So positive times negative. Remember, I suggest to you guys, write your answer box. Positive times negative is negative. So I like to put that negative sign in my answer box before I do any math so I don't forget. All right, so 3 9/10 times negative 8/3. First, we're going to make 3 9/10 improper. So 3 times 10 is 30. Plus 9 is 39/10 times negative 8/3. So now we're going to cross cancel. Divide by 2, divide by 2, divide by 3, divide by 3. 13 times 4 is 52. 1 times 5 is 5. 52 divided by 5 is 10 2/5. So that would be negative 10, negative 10 2/5 would be your final answer. Number 15, multiplying decimals. So notice here we've got a negative times a negative, and we know negative times negative is positive. So I'm going to write myself a little reminder in my answer box. That's going to be a positive answer. All right, so remember, I've suggested put the number with more digits on the top of your multiplication problem and put the number with less digits on the bottom. So 4 times 2 is 8, 4 times 0, 4 times 6. 0 placeholder, 4 times 2, 4 times 0, 4 times 6. Add your digits. Highlight the numbers behind the decimal in the problem. You've got 3. So we're going to slide that over 1, 2, 3. So you've got to have 3 digits behind the decimal in your answer. So I'm going to have to make this a little bigger. Answer 26 488 thousandths. Division. So notice here we have a negative divided by a positive. Negative divided by positive is a negative. So I'm going to write that in my answer box before I forget. So when you're reading a division problem from left to right, negative 5 divided by 1 5/10, the first number always goes on the inside of the division. The second number is your divisor that goes on the outside. So remember, before you start dividing, you've got to slide that decimal over, which means in the dividend, you're going to have to add a decimal, add a 0, and slide it over. From that point, your decimal is going to go straight up in your answer. All right, so now we're ready to do the math. So 15 cannot go into 5. We know 15 times 3 is 45. 50 minus 45 is 5. If you get a remainder, you have to add a 0. Again, we know that 15 times 3 is 45. Subtract. Remember, as long as it's repeated at least 3 times, you can stop. If my iPad will cooperate. Oh my goodness. Okay, so the 3 is clearly repeating. So that's going to be negative 3 3/10 repeating. So sorry. Okay, there we go. Negative mixed number divided by a positive mixed number. So if you have, remember, you're more than welcome to use highlighters on your test if that helps you. We've got a negative divided by a positive number, and we know that's going to be a negative answer. So you can go ahead and put that in your answer box so you don't forget when you're finished with your math. All right, so 1 times 6 is 6, plus 5 is 11. So that's 11 sixths. 4 times 6 is 24, plus 1 is 25. After you convert to improper, then we do keep, switch, flip. After you do keep, switch, flip, cross cancel. After you cross cancel, multiply numerators and multiply denominators. Remember that you were dividing a negative by a positive, so that's going to be negative 11 25ths. Number 18, oh my, order of operations. We've got multiplying and multiplying. So we're going to go from left to right. So we've got a negative times a positive. That's going to be a negative answer. But first I have to convert my 2 and 2/7 to improper. So I'm going to have 3/5 times 2 times 7 is 14, plus 2 is 16 sevenths. This is multiplying, not dividing, so we're not flipping anything for multiplying. Look to see if you can cross cancel, which you cannot. 3 times 16 is 48, and 5 times 7 is 35. Now, since we're in the middle of the problem, you do not have to simplify yet, because think about it. We still have to multiply this times another mixed number, right? So aren't you going to have to switch that back? If you switched it now to a mixed, you're going to have to switch it back again to improper to solve the math. So for right now, we're going to leave that 48 over 35. And we're going to multiply that times this negative 3 3/4. So now I'm converting negative 3 3/4 to improper. So 3 times 4 is 12, plus 3 is 15. This is multiplying, not dividing. So we are not flipping. Cross cancel, divide by 4, divide by 4, divide by 5, divide by 5. Multiply numerators, multiply denominators. Simplify, 36 divided by 7, 5 and 1/7. But now we have to go look at our signs. So we had a positive mixed number right here, but we had a negative and a negative. Those two negatives are going to cancel each other out. So that's going to be a positive 5 and 1/7. Multiplying and multiplying. So now we've got a negative times a negative times a negative. Well, negative times negative is positive, and positive times negative is negative. So I'm going to put my negative sign up there so I don't forget. So we're going to go from left to right. So put the number with more digits on the top. So let's multiply 5/100 times 6. So 6 times 5 is 30. Count the digits behind the decimal in the problem. There were 2. You need 2 digits behind the decimal in your answer. This last 0 holds no value, so I'm actually just going to call that answer 3/10. So now my problem is 0 and 3/10 times negative 4/10. So now I've got 0.3 times 0.4. Well, 4 times 3 is 12. There's 1 digit, 2 digits behind the decimal. You need 2 digits behind the decimal. So your decimal is going to be sitting in front, right there. And it's a negative, so it's negative 12/100. Okay, we've only got 3 left. How many 2 2500ths pound containers can you make with 24 7500ths pounds of almonds? So what we're doing is we're taking all of these almonds and we're dividing them into containers that each hold 2 2500ths pounds. So this is going to be long division. So we're going to divide 24 7500ths by 2 2500ths. All right, so slide your decimal, slide your decimal. So my decimal is going to be sitting right here. 225 cannot go into 2 or into 24. 225 can go into 247 once. Subtract and drop your 5. 225 into 225 goes once with 0 left over. Question, how many containers? Answer, 11 containers. Find the area of the rectangle. So area is always length times width. So I'm going to multiply 5 1/3 times 10 1/6. So this is 16/3 times 61/6. This is not division, so we're not flipping anything. Okay. So we're going to cross cancel. We're going to divide by 2 and divide by 2. We're going to multiply across. 61 times 8 is 488. And 3 times 3 is 9. Now you know what we've got to do. 488 divided by 9. Find the area. So 54 2/9 inches squared. Last one. A 10.5 gallon gasoline tank is 1/4 full. How many gallons will it take to fill the tank? So this is the amount that the tank can hold. This is the amount already in the tank. So there are a couple different ways you can think about this. If it's 1/4 full, it's 3/4 empty. What'd she just say? If it's 1/4 of the way full, then it's 3/4 empty. How many gallons will it take to fill the tank? So you can find 3/4 of 10.5. 3/4 of 10.5. I think most of us have agreed we prefer decimals over fractions. We know that 3/4 is equal to 7500ths. So we can multiply 7500ths times 10.5. Count the digits behind the decimal. We had a 0.5 and a 0.75. So we need 3 digits behind the decimal in the answer. Read the question again. A 10.5 gallon gasoline tank is 1/4 full. How many gallons? 7 875 gallons. Now, if you did it as a fraction, your answer would be 7 7/8. So either answer would be acceptable. All right, that's it.